Here we go. Prevailations podcast number 20-something. We are Sean and Danny from Prevail Strength and Fitness. And let's see, what else are we from? Prevail Adventure Club. We're from
Lean Strength
Nutrition Coaching.
Danny G Photography.
And yeah, so we are gym owners for a long time, coaches for a long time, been around a lot of people, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, so today we're going to get into specifically this quote, the weight.
Episode 21.
There we go, episode 21. The fat loss or the midsection bulge after 40. Kind of specifically around the female, but not necessarily super dive into only the female, but basically fat loss over 40.
Yeah.
And
this can also play into fat loss in general. We'll go into that a little more, but yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the over 40 part and then into the female part is there's like an asterisk on top of the regular fat loss, weight loss conversation. So there's like the normal fat loss conversation, and then there's like it's like a multiplier or like definitely a little bit of a star of like, okay, well, after 40, this matters. As a female after 40, this matters, because it just becomes more complicated.
Yeah.
Basically. And that's what we really wanted to type. So this is part one, and we're going to talk to two different other people as well from different perspectives about this, because fat loss over 40 and for the female is a unique environment.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of work into.
Yeah. And we have another instructor at Prevail who
is an over 40
female.
And
and has crushed her own body composition and strength goals.
Yep.
After the age of 40.
Right.
So she will be great to come on. I'm excited to have her on, and then somebody else who works in the field of functional medicine and
it was also
she sees a ton,
so she's seen
women.
Both sides of it.
Yeah.
And as we set this like foundation for this conversation, there's a couple things that we really want to make sure we're like getting out there first. Okay. Right? I think one of the first things is it's so hard being gym owners. It's very hard to not get wrapped up in weight loss, fat loss, body composition as a single track of the entire goal of the process.
Yes.
Right. And it's really important from a mental standpoint that your time in the gym, and specifically for us, that means strength training, is we can't forget about all the other values of high quality structured training. Right. So, yes, high strength training, going to the gym, doing cardio, doing intervals, all those things will facilitate better results with body composition and weight loss.
Yeah.
But it also, if we only are thinking about that result and nothing else, it's really a bummer on how much other results you're getting from exercise.
Yeah, and sometimes it can take away the fun of exercise.
Right. And when you're only thinking about like, well, I have to get this done to get to this result, it takes away the fun. It puts too much like unnecessary stress on the point of coming in and exercising.
Yeah.
So there's still there's a huge list of valuable results from consistent exercise.
Yeah.
Everything. There's just like your energy, your sleep, your bone density, your muscle mass, your mobility, your function, your metabolic function, your longevity, your ability to do things with more confidence and freedom, tons and tons and tons of things. And even if you look into our environment, the social aspect of working out with others and being around other like-minded individuals, and all those things are huge benefits that we don't want to diminish because we're not hitting our fat loss results.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of go into regardless if you're 40, regardless if you're female, there are still absolute truths when it comes to fat loss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of those is, we talk about this all the time, and you're currently still have students who are doing like counting macros.
Yep.
Is this word consistency. What do you think the biggest gap from what we know consistency is and what someone else thinks consistency is?
7 days a week
Mm-hmm.
versus 4 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's probably like the biggest, like
That's
overall.
Yeah, the biggest, because we got this Monday through Thursday kind of like crank, and then we have this Friday, Saturday, Sunday drip, and like fall, and
Right.
like
Yeah.
and
And sometimes when you're looking at your week as a whole, it's really easy to remember the days that you checked off all the things that you wanted to check off.
Right.
And you're like, man, I put in so much work.
Yep.
And then we kind of forget about the other like
Yep.
chaos days.
Yeah. Right.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the amount of work, it's hard because a lot of people are like, I'm putting in so much effort, which is not to diminish that they aren't putting in effort, because they are putting in considerably more effort than they were before.
Yeah.
But what's hard, and it's hard to like, not be empathetic around, is that the amount of work you're doing is the frequency of it isn't there.
Yeah.
Yes, you're putting in considerably more effort into the process, and it's been 11 days, and you don't see all the results you want. Well, there's one. It's easy for us to want to have faster. Everyone wants faster results.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I have zero patience. I understand this.
Everyone.
Yeah. You want
everything. We want faster results. We want to make money faster. We want to get stronger faster. We want everything.
We want to be faster.
Right. We want to run faster. We want to do everything we want to do is
Yeah.
faster. So it's hard to slow down and go, oh man, this is going to take longer than I want.
Yeah.
But the amount of effort is like, you really have to kind of get your headspace into like, okay, on an average day, I'm putting in 50% effort before starting into a new process.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to put in 70 to 80%. Well, you've almost doubled your effort.
Yeah.
It's 30 to 40% more, which
Yeah.
seems like a considerable amount, and it is. But it's not enough when you think about, I really need to put like 75% effort every day for like multiple weeks in a row.
Multiple.
You need to string together at least 3 weeks of 75% for 7 days a week.
Yeah.
For there really to be any kind of change in result.
Yeah. And then if you came into the process already putting in 75% effort,
Right.
then that means you have to bump up to like 95% effort 3 weeks in a row.
Right.
Yeah.
And that number 75 is a perceived effort.
Right.
So it could feel like I'm putting in so much work, and then you look at the hard data of like what they're tracking, what they're consuming, what they're doing for movement, and you're like, well, you're only really doing like 6 out of 10 things.
Right.
I know it may take you 80% effort to do these 6 out of 10 things, but it may take you 100% effort just to do 8 out of 10 things.
And then there's this like positive and negative about like your perceived putting in effort on, okay, I'm putting in all this work to drink my water and eat protein and get my daily movement in. And all of that effort is great, and it could be holding you at maintenance, which is still a great a great thing to just be a healthy human that's getting in enough water and protein and movement, but it might not be enough to hit your fat loss goals. Right,
because you've never tracked things before, and so everything you feel is kind of subjective, and then you get into this process and you're like, oh, it takes this much amount of effort to slow down the quote unquote negative gains I was making in the past. You're like, oh, I didn't realize I was gaining like a pound or 2 or 3 every month.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm putting in all this effort and I haven't lost anything. Like, yeah, but you also haven't gained anything.
Which is great too. Yeah.
That's a huge thing, is like, if you think about the simple like money in, money out of a bank account,
right,
you're like, golly, I'm not making any more money. But like, but you're spending considerably less than before.
Yeah.
The savings account is getting bigger.
Yeah.
And that's basically like you holding on to your balance of, of things that happen.
Yeah.
So there's that basics of like, and no matter how you think about things, no matter if you're what age you are, what sex you are, where you are in your process, managing the energy equation is ultimately how we have a fat loss. Right? There are other types of weight to lose, and we'll get into that with the other parts of this conversation. We get into Richie and we get into Dr. Tiffany Richie. When we get into inflammation, right? That's a different type of weight loss. But when we're talking specifically fat loss, like I'm going to get rid of fat, it's managing an energy equation.
Yep.
And that's all there is to it.
Yep.
Now, what makes an energy equation is complicated because there's so many variables.
Yep.
And age is one of the variables. Hormones, one of the variables. Sex is one of the variables. Like there's so many things that can change that pieces of the recipe, but the recipe is always constant.
Yep.
And so we have to figure out a way to upset the energy balance. And in order for your body to respond to that equation, we come back to the word consistency.
Yep.
Because you have to give it it's like a science experiment. You have to give it a set of rules and then only apply that one set of rules for weeks on end for your body to learn and adapt to those responses.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you want your body to adapt to the changes that you're making consistently.
Right.
Because that's how you see the results, right?
And adaptation, this is the part that's so much nuance, is different for every single person. One person can have an application of process for 8 days and have changes immediately.
Yeah.
Other people may take them 13 or 30 days of a process for their body to go, oh, now I understand. This is like the cellular part of your body. It's going, oh, I am now going to make an adaptation because I've learned that this is the responses. This is the things you want to give me.
Yeah.
So every person is different in how fast that body wants to turn around that mechanism.
Yep. Everybody's different on how fast they see the results. Yep. And then also your energy equation is different.
Right.
Throughout the years, throughout the months, can be throughout the days, depending on what's happening. Right.
So not only is the person A, B, and C three different individuals, you got to think about the three individuals of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think when we get into this, like, I'm this 45-year-old female, the things that I'm doing now, right, are the things that used to work for me.
Yeah.
And this is the past version of yourself, which might as well be a completely different human.
Yep.
And this is where it gets complicated. Because you're like, this worked before, why isn't it working now?
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things that have changed since then. Like, there's other things that have changed that you don't know about. Like, oh, well, since I was 25 to 45, my average walking steps without me ever counting went from 4,000 to 1,000 because of life changes, because of like structural things, because of the way your day to day is changing, because of a job change, because of like so many things change.
Yeah.
Your energy drops, so you have less movement. Your sleep quality changes because of 100 different things. So sometimes it's not the fact that you're 40 or that you're a female, it's that the life you live now as a 45-year-old is not the same life you're living as a 25-year-old.
Right. Stressors could be different. Sleep quality could be different. I mean, that plays a huge one.
Social environment's completely different.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many different factors. And we kind of see this every 3-4 years. I mean, in ourselves too, on like how our bodies respond differently to exercise things or nutrition things.
Yeah. And I can tell for sure that, and then if you look at this hard science, metabolism does not change until you're in your 60s. But the things that your environment that create a metabolism do change. So it's not like, oh, my metabolism's broken now that I'm 40. It's like, well, no, the environment you're putting your body into is different from 40 than 20. Not into your 60s do you actually have an internal environment change metabolism.
Sure.
So I know for a fact the amount of movement that I'm doing when I was 20 compared to 40 is completely different. It is way harder for me to maintain the same level of energy, body fat, muscle mass, strength at 40 than it was in my 20s.
Sure.
And it's mainly because the amount of stress I have is considerably different. Way different. So managing stress has changed quite a bit. Managing the amount of time like I'm moving around. Just simple stuff like, well, when I was in my late 20s or 30s, I was on the floor teaching 15 to 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
I was getting in who knows how many steps back then.
Yeah.
No one was ever tracking. But I know now I don't teach any floor hours, but very randomly. Well, because everything I'm doing now is mainly like person-to-person based or person-to-computer based. So I'm just doing considerably more sitting than I was before.
Yeah.
Not because I'm 40. It's because the environment of a 40-year-old is different than a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So the environment changes post 40. And now we get into like weight loss after 40. This is where we say it gets more complicated because you have to take so much more of like a really hard look at the entire equation.
Yeah.
In your 20s, you kind of had to be like, well, I'll eat less shit and
Right.
things change.
Right.
Because it was
Yeah.
it was the
Yeah.
only one real big
I'm gonna
variable that
go-
mattered.
I'm going to go on a little shuffle 1 to 2 times a week.
I'm going to
and,
add in
like-
some movement, and your
Right.
body's like, very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
We'll adapt to that. And now you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to add some movement, and your body's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not
and I do think that, like, I mean, we'll probably go into this a little more, but hormones do change as
Yeah.
we get older. And
Yeah.
then, like, the quality of nutrition is,
Yeah.
I mean, it just has to be more dialed in because your body does need different and more nutrients
Right.
of things
Right.
to
Right.
help the balance of those hormones
Right.
to really set you up for success.
Right.
And I've noticed that as well,
Mhm.
just being pregnant, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, certain things make me feel better. But yeah, if you're not getting enough fat in your diet, or like good fat or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
high quality protein,
Right.
you know, you can't really just live off of protein bars all the time. Or,
Right.
I mean, the stuff I used to eat at 22,
Yeah. Right.
you know,
yeah.
I could lose weight, but
Right. Yeah. The internal and external environments are just different.
Yeah.
They're just different for lots and lots and lots of reasons. So here's the part that sucks is it's just harder now.
yeah,
That's it. When
you have to
people
be
are like-
more dialed in.
Yeah. People are like, well, yeah, after 40, it gets harder. You're like, so what?
And you're like, yeah, it does.
It does. But is this the result you want or
Right.
not? Because
Right.
if it is,
Yeah.
then let's like really take some time. And it's not impossible. It still happens. Everyone can make results.
Yeah.
It's just the amount of, and this is another interesting part, is like the amount of mental bandwidth you had at 25 to put
Mhm.
into a process compared to the amount of mental bandwidth you have at 45
Mhm.
is way different
Mhm.
because you have so many more things that you're processing all the time. You're like, golly, I'm going to add in more load
Yeah.
of things, even though it's kind of the same mental work
Mhm.
from 25 to 45. Now
You have so many other tasks and
everything else is so
things
much
in your
more.
brain. Yeah. Yeah.
So much more. So it
Yeah.
feels like it's way different because
Mhm.
it is different, but it's still the same amount of work.
Yeah.
It's just that there's so much more work outside of that it
Mhm.
makes it feel impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So consistency will kind of like dive into just that consistency part from what is the recipe for consistency,
Okay.
right? If you think about movement for recipe consistency means I need to get into a consistent, repeatable week
Mm-hmm.
that's maintainable, which means, okay, in theory, I'm going to hit 2 sessions a week of legit structured strength training. I'm going to hit 3 days a week of legit 10K steps a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hit 1 day a week of some sort of like run, jog, bike, cardio thing for half an hour, right?
Okay.
And I have 1 day of rest.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a weekly recipe, then you have to figure out the weekly recipe that you can consistently hit
Mhm.
week after week after week after week.
Yep.
With only maybe a day or two change between the two. So one day you do less steps, but you do more lifting. One day you do more steps, or, you know, one day 2 days of running instead of one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can interchange those like 5 to 6 days of movement,
Mm-hmm.
or you can also deload that 5 to 6 days of movement. We're like, well, all right, I'm gonna hit 2 sessions a week, or I'm gonna hit 3 strength training sessions a week. I'm gonna hit on the other 3 days. I'm gonna hit 5K a day, and I'm a 1 day of rest.
Yeah.
Well, if that's your recipe that you can maintain,
For movement.
fantastic.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong on like, you know, what is the recipe. We
Right.
have some like minimal effective and maximal effective like recipe dosages. But really what matters the most for your body responding is like, I need to learn a recipe and a consistency that I can do week after week after week after week.
Yeah.
Because if you can't maintain that solid foundation of what I can control, then everything post with your consistency is irrelevant because you have nothing to like lean on from like the movement side.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 You can't set yourself up for just like, okay, well, this week I can lift 5 days a week and hit 10,000 steps 7 days a week.
Right.
And then at the end of those 7 days, you don't have results yet. And you're like, well, this isn't working.
Right.
Well, it could be working.
Right.
But also if you can't maintain it, then it's definitely not going to work.
Right. It's not the right recipe.
Yeah.
And I think that for the over 40-year-old, I think part of that recipe, you just can't, and especially for the female, you can't lean into cardio like you used to.
No.
That's definitely a big shift that has to change.
Yeah. I was going to bring this up just a tiny bit on everyone's like life cycles. And if you have stopped strength training or lifting from like anywhere 20 to 40,
mm-hmm.
your amount of muscle mass you have on your body could play into this energy equation as well.
Right.
On like, I mean.
Right. Because we naturally will lose muscle mass as we age after like 32 years old.
Yeah.
So if there's no input of stress, like a physical stressor of like load management, that can come from lots of things. Your body will just lose muscle mass.
Right.
So resistance training will maintain or gain more muscle mass on top of other benefits. But I think the way that the body starts to respond to stress is different from a 25 to 45-year-old because your availability to handle stress is different. So you can't lean into as much, and I say as much as like if you were doing 6 days a week of running,
right,
and that was your recipe at 25, you can't repeat that recipe at 45.
Right.
Because your body's going to be like, I don't want to respond to all this type of stress. And I've already learned this stress before, and it's not giving me anything back except for I'm just getting a stress response. And maybe if you're doing a really smart training, you could have some like conditioning response, but the amount of people doing like super smart conditioning, that's pretty low compared to like I'm just running to run.
Right.
So you've got to have resistance training at least 2 days a week of at least 45 minutes. As a standard. And then from there, you start to add in the other stuff. Yeah. Right? And then if it's like the HIIT and cardio stuff, you're really at like that 1 to 2 days a week of kind of like intensity-based conditioning. Yeah. Before the body has more negative response than positive response from the conditioning. Yeah. And then you get into zone 2 and walking, and that stuff can be pretty much limitless. Yeah. More or less. There's a little bit of nuance between the male and the female on the female's response to zone 2 compared to the male response to zone 2. The female body likes a little more of an interval-based system than a male body does for zone 2. The zone 2 conditioning seems to have a better response in the male body does the female body, but not that either one is...
For body composition solely or like in general?
Stress management, for response, for mitochondrial density, for all that type of like physiological type stuff. Again, this we have to talk about. This is not absolutes. Right. This is nuance. And you really think, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do 5 days a week of like zone 2 cardio. I'm going to do an Orange Theory. I'm going to go to a HIIT class. I'm going to do all this muddled middle cardio-based stuff. Yeah. That's not going to serve you any justice anymore. Now, if you do 1 day a week of that, I do 1 day a week of my spin class. Yeah. I do 1 day a week of a nice easy jog for 45 minutes. I do 1 day a week of like bike sprints, and I have the other 3 days a week of strength training. Yeah. Great. Right? Yeah. But you have to have that strength training as a foundation from the muscle organ responding to your body. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then on the other side, you have the consistency of nutrition. Yeah. And this is way more difficult than it is consistency of movement. But those two play into each other. Yep. Because it is a give and a take between finding your energy equation, where you've got, just like exercise, you have the volume daily, you've got the intensity and type of exercise. Yep. Finding something that you can maintain week after week after week after week, same thing with nutrition. You have to start to learn what is the volume of food, the type of food, the intensity or the balance of that food
Right.
that works in consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. Which this is where macros comes in can
Right.
be helpful.
This is
Which can seem like a pain in the ass and overwhelming and,
Mhm.
but
Right.
depends what results you want.
It depends on results.
Yeah.
It also depends on your personality.
Yeah.
There's some people who like to have tons of structure because that
Mhm.
makes it easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
There are other personalities where adding structure makes it harder for them.
Yep.
Some people need simple rules. Some people need complex rules. And this is all an individual personality and experience.
Yeah.
It's not that macros do or do not work.
Right.
It's not that intuitive eating does or does not work. It's like, where does this line with your personality? And not personality from like sense of like, this needs to be easy.
Right.
But some people like the idea of like, cool, I have a structure of like how much food I need to eat a day and the portions of
Mhm.
carbs, fats, and proteins I need to make work for my day.
Yeah.
And people thrive in that structure.
Yeah.
Other people are like, just tell me
Exactly what to eat.
exactly what to eat, which is okay for some super, super, super type A personalities that have
Yes.
no social emotional attachment to food.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have any type of emotional attachment to food, tell me what to eat does not work. You have to learn how and why to eat.
Yeah.
And to do that, counting is a tool to learn that starts you to like, I don't count anymore, but that's only because I've counted for so long.
Right.
Because now it's second nature. I just can like eyeball everything and look at it. But
Yeah.
it's only coming from the skill of counting.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and people like, well, does a low carb diet work better for a female after 40? Well, is it easier for a female after 40 to say, I'm just not going to eat I'm not going to eat carbohydrates today? Because that's a simple task.
Right.
Oh, I'll just look for fats and proteins.
Yeah.
It's not because the actual carbohydrate intake is
Mhm.
necessarily changing that much.
Yeah.
And this is where fitness, fat loss over 40 for the female, this is probably something that changes, is the amount of carbs you could eat in your 20s. It's just not the same for your 40s.
No.
It's not the same. The body's ability to kind of manage carbohydrates
Mhm.
is different now.
Yeah.
Once you get into your 40s and 50s and 60s, especially with these hormone changes.
Mhm. Unless you've kind of done like a 180 from 20 to 40 and you have,
Mm-hmm.
30% more muscle mass
Right.
as a 40-year-old
Right.
than you
Right.
did at
Right.
25
Right.
and you're like way more active and
Right.
then maybe.
Right. Because if you're
you
super
know?
active and you have the muscle mass, then you have the engine for carbohydrates.
Right.
But if you're not, those carbohydrates don't have that type of fuel inside that engine's different now.
Mhm.
And I think there is a little bit of a shift away from a carbohydrate-based diet that doesn't work anymore. No matter what, it has to be a protein-focused diet.
Right.
You can shift the carbs and macros and fats around,
Mhm.
depending, but it has to be a protein-forward diet.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it, especially for people over 40 and females over 40.
Yeah.
You can't get away from not having a protein-forward diet.
No.
And protein-forward meaning like at least 0.7 grams to body weight.
Yeah.
At minimal, you have to hit those numbers
Yeah.
because the system is going to that's going to make the system the happiest.
Yep. Yeah.
So in consistency with that means 7 days a week.
Yeah.
It does not mean 4 days a week and then 2 days a week and then
Mhm.
5 days a week and then 7 days a week and then 1 day a week.
Mhm.
It means 7 days a week, week after week after week, and then 21 days after 7 days a week of protein. Then you can say,
Yeah.
okay, I've been consistent in my process.
Mhm.
Here are my results. Oh, I hit 0.7 grams. I did this recipe of things. I was 8 out of 10 on all my food.
Mhm.
3 weeks later, I've had no change. Awesome.
Yeah. Now we know what to adjust.
Now we know what to adjust.
Yeah.
But if you never get to that 3 or 4 week part,
Yeah.
you're never going to it. You're
Yeah.
never going to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a few examples
Mhm.
from some Prevail students who have like literally crushed their body composition goals. But one conversation, first 2 months probably,
Mhm.
every week, it was kind of like, that's stop.
Every week. Every week. Week after week after week after week was
we would do a check-in every week. And, you know, one of the questions is like, did you see any results on the in-body scale, which measures body fat and muscle mass, or in the mirror? Especially body composition goal. So are you, you know, looking at these things? And she's like, no. But all of her macros, she was like, you know, I'm hitting everything. And then I asked her after 8 weeks of not seeing the changes that she wanted to see, are you tracking literally everything? And she was like, well, you know, the random bites here and there, half of a cookie here and there, things off of my kids' plates. And I was like, you're at a point where you're just maintaining where you're at. So if you really want to dial this in, then you have to track everything. And she did it, and she's down 10% body fat in 8 months.
Right.
And I mean, that's just what it took, but she got the results that she wanted, but she didn't know. Yeah. She was like, I didn't think that was that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the next piece, that after 40, there's just less tolerance for error. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to, this is what sucks. It's just that there's less wiggle room than there was before.
Yeah.
And that's it. So, yeah. And then if you look at this entire recipe and you say, okay, I'm over 40, female / male. Let's just kind of lean into like the female side of it. You're like, I'm hitting the weights 3 days a week. I'm moving with appropriate intensity inside of weight training. Like, I'm lifting,
this is also important,
actually heavy. I'm really going to failure on my muscle days. I'm really lifting heavy on my lift days. I can physically see myself measurably getting stronger, which means strength training is working. Yeah. That piece is consistent. Okay, I've got good daily movement, whatever your consistent daily movement is. I have a sprinkling of cardio here and there. Yeah. Okay, perfect. That's the side of movement recipe, right? Now, on the other side, I've been consistently hitting my 0.7 grams of protein. I have been an 8 out of 10 with the volume and quality of my food, which is taking me 100% effort.
Right.
Okay. And it's been 30 days. I get on InBody, minimal changes everywhere. Okay. Now, this is discussion this person has to have inside their brain. They go, okay, this is the perfect recipe for me to maintain my health.
Right. Which is important.
Which is important. Maintain my progress. Maintain where I am. I'm getting stronger. I have better energy. I'm moving better. I'm not gaining or losing. Yeah. Everything else in my life is improved. Okay. Now, do I still want, and which is normal, right? You look in the mirror and go, I don't like that. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. Great. Right. We understand that. Okay. Now you have to ask yourself, is the amount of I don't like that in the mirror
enough
in line with, everything I'm doing has to be better and more. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're like, okay, I care as much about this results as I care about putting in more effort consistently. If those are equal, let's push. Let's talk about the next recipe. Yeah. But if you get to that point and you're like, good grief, it takes this much work to just not get worse. Yeah. And you're like, I do not want to put in more effort. Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's focus on the things we can control. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to maintain this recipe, and I'm going to get really excited about other things. Yeah. I'm going to get excited about maybe working harder on or more diligently about a strength progression or about a new activity in my life or about whatever else it is that you want to like put your mental bandwidth into. Yeah. Both of those things are right answers. Yeah. Yeah. Neither one of them are wrong.
No, because maintenance is like, it is really easy for us to not pay attention and to like not work out. Yeah. So somebody putting in effort to move consistently weekly and drink water and eat protein and eat vegetables or whatever, like that is a huge win on like overall health in our society and lifestyle and all the things.
That's a huge win, because especially in our,
it's huge.
In our 40s, and we know that like time goes by fast, and you're like, okay, this is the recipe. But then you kind of zoom out and go, man, if I maintain this recipe for the next 5 years from 45 to 50,
I'm in a pretty good like track.
I am in a great track, and I'm also going to be like
I'm not like declining.
Leaps and bounds over everyone around me at 50. Yeah. Huge differences between those who I'm around Even though I may not actually want to be where I'm like, where I really, really, really want to be, but I don't think the really, really want to be is like the goal.
Yeah.
I think there's the idea of being a leaner version of yourself that you're like, that would be awesome. And then you think there's some magical things going to happen when you become leaner. But is it really going to be, is all of that worth all of that mental effort? The worst part is it just breaks our heart to see people who are like getting stronger, moving better, and they're like, yeah, but this section over here, and they like point at some part of their body, and you're like,
it's hard.
I'm just so bummed that you're not grateful for all the other positive things that are happening in your life, and that you're still having this negative response to like, well, I guess I should work out more, to get more results, and you're like, that's not the like, that's not where, you know what I'm saying, like that's such a bummer that we're not being grateful for all this effort we're putting into and the results we're getting from it.
And then on the flip side of that, you can still be grateful for all of the results you're getting and focus on body composition. Like you can do that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this like, what I'm doing isn't enough. You can be like super excited on like, I love that I'm getting stronger and faster and I have more energy and my hormones are on track and I'm sleeping good. And yeah, I do want to lose a couple percent of body fat because I would feel better in my shorts. Yeah. Okay, great. But you're still appreciating both sides of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. That's it. So to kind of wrap up, you need to have a SMART goal. We've talked about SMART goals. You can look at the other podcast for that. Yeah. Right. And then you need to have an expectation of results that's appropriate. And then you need to figure out the recipe that I can maintain week in, week out for a minimum of the next 3 weeks. Yes. But you should really be in a 3-month headspace, not a 3-week headspace. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I tell everybody this, and I know they hate it by now, all the girls that I coach, but it takes my body 21 to 25 days of hitting the exact same things to see half a pound on the scale.
Yeah. And that's like
dialed in.
Dialed in. That's like 98%
and that's just my body. Not everyone, but I say give yourself that room to really know if it's working or not. Yeah.
And then the other part of it is, I think for the fat loss over 40 and the female, there's a few parts of the recipe that are different now. That is, you've got to be deeper into strength training, deeper into heavier lifting part there, right? You've got to be a little bit smarter about your conditioning. You know, I think that you need to kind of like look at the conditioning you're doing and going, okay, am I having like a super hard day, a medium day, and a super easy day if I'm going to be leaning that direction? Or am I doing 5 days a week of medium? Something's got to change there. I think the recipe is to like make one day super hard, one day easy, and one day super easy, and then load the rest with walking and strength training. And then on the nutrition side, I do think that there's less tolerance to carbohydrates. You need to lean heavier into the proteins and high quality fats than ever before. And I think that comes down to just not saying that you have to be zero carb. It's just that your ability to eat as many carbs as before is different.
Yes. I was going to say, especially if you're not doing high quality progressive overload strength training. Sure. Because the girls that I know that are coming in to Prevail 3 to 4 times a week, I'm like, yeah, you're going to need high quality carbs to fuel these workouts and to fuel your muscles to see muscle changes. Yeah. But if you're not, your body is not going to respond to.
No, you're going to have to be super high protein, super high fat, low carbohydrate if movement is super low. Yeah. That's just going to have to be the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not really pushing the weights in the gym.
Yeah. And then the other things outside of that direct one are going to be stress management, sleep management, hormones,
quality of food.
Quality of food, micronutrients. That's going to be a future conversation later on. But no matter what's going on with your hormones, this recipe is still constant. Yeah. You can't just get the hormones fixed and then not do the other things and see results. Yeah. On the flip side, you can be doing all these things and results are super, super, super slow. And then adding in a hormone type of like therapy may increase the speed and intensity of the results. But you can't just skip the consistency part about exercise, food, and nutrition.
Yeah.
You can't. It has to be there no matter everything else that's going on. That's got to be there. And I think a lot of people will think, I'm doing all things I'm supposed to be doing. It's not working. Let me get into the hormone side. And you're like, well, you're actually only doing like 50% of the things you think are working.
Or 50% of the time.
Or 50% of the time you're doing it. And then you look back over the last 10 days and like, yeah, there's several days where I did great. And you're like, oh, that's not, you got to be at 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And not perfect 7 days a week, but you got to be at the consistent process 7 days a week.
Yeah.
There's no way around that.
Yeah.
No way around it. You have to be 7 days of consistency. Whatever your consistent is, you need to make it week in, week out. Not perfect, just the same.
Yeah.
Then we can get talking into like what the hormones and how those things will affect how the hormones affect those 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can have hormone changes by just getting into consistent 7 days.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
You can have hormone changes without the actual like artificial like intake or, prescription of another hormone after that.
Yeah.
So fitness over 40 females, add in strength training, heavy for sure. Be smart about your cardio. Don't avoid it, but try to make it different. High protein, pull back the carbohydrates a little bit to a minimal effective dose, right? Daily walks, lots of NEAT, and then sleep control, sleep quality, stress management, all those things, separate conversation. We'll get into
for 3+ weeks.
Yeah, for three plus
to
weeks.
see what you need to adjust.
3+ weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we'll get into another conversation with Whit about her experience as a 40+-year-old female.
Yeah, I'm excited
We'll get into
about
another
that.
conversation with Richie as another 45+ female. Earlier when you were talking about, like, can we really talk about a 40+-year-old
I was saying
females?
this because I'm 35 and pregnant right now, so I'm not even in the category. Sean is obviously not a female, but he is in his 40s.
I am in my 40s. But the other part of it is, regardless of that, I have been training and having conversations with females over 40 for 15+ years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing, like, I'll never be a mom. I have been training moms for 15+ years. So can I speak from the same I am a 45-year-old woman? No, absolutely not. Yeah. But my outside perspective from over a decade does give me quite a bit of validity in understanding the process, because I've seen it work and I've seen it not work. Yeah. And I've seen the differences between working and not working. I've seen the recipes repeat themselves and be successful and not. Yeah. So from the outside in, there's hard truths that are unavoidable.
Yeah. But don't worry, we'll still be podcasting in 10 years and we'll come back and you can interview me when I'm 45.
Oh, yes. Goodness gracious. There'll be a whole other person now on the podcast.
Yeah, we didn't even do any life update. We'll do that. We'll do that this week because we opened a whole studio and we're like pregnant now. So,
yeah.
Okay,
so there we go.
Shut it down.
If you're on YouTube, comment and argue with us or agree with us. If you see this on Instagram or Danny_Prevail or Facebook, whatever it is, comment, like, subscribe. And then if you have ideas for podcasts and content you want us to make, please let us know and we'll dive into any kind of specific topic. If there's other things you want us to talk about, well, we can do that too, but just let us know, communicate. And
excited. We're excited because we're getting back on the podcasting.
We
had 3 weeks off, maybe 4.
We had a wild 30 days.
But we're back at it.
Wild 30 days. Okay, that's part 1. Part 2 will be coming in the next couple weeks, and we'll dive in more.
Whoop, whoop.
Hope this helps.
Bye.